Welcome to the show, NFL Draft. We spent so much time getting ready for the NFL Draft, and now it is in the books, and we will look back at day 3. I'm Adam Azer here with Dave Richard. Chris Trapasso is going to join us soon. He's finishing up some written content. He has to write grades for every team. He has to write grades for every pick, and go to our draft tracker and look at his write-ups and his grades for each pick, okay? You want to see a fantasy guy, a guy that your favorite team drafted. He'll give you 2 to 3 sentences on the player and tell you if he liked it or not. So we'll talk to Chris in a moment here. Anyway, hope everybody enjoyed the show. Hope everybody's having a good weekend. I'm sorry, the draft. Then you will soon enjoy this show and having a good weekend. Dave Richard, what was your favorite day 3 pick?
It came early on day 3. The Jaguars took Bhayshul Tuten. This is a very fast, not too tiny running back who could certainly displace Tank Bigsby as the 1B back. And if Travis Etienne can't get going, he could be the 1A back in Jacksonville. And I think it's important to preface that day 3 picks typically do not become huge fantasy stars. We actually spent some time before we came on air looking at players that had a big rookie year that were taken on day 3. It's really slim. There aren't a lot of players that do it, but as Schaefer pointed out, these are guys that can maybe be helpful for a few games during the season, and maybe there's a pathway for them to be impactful fantasy players moving forward. But I don't want to get too excited about anybody that got taken on Saturday. Tuten is one of those guys that I'm going to be pretty excited about. I thought he should have been taken on day 2, and I like the landing spot in Jacksonville.
Okay, so yeah, let's talk about that and let's just give you some numbers. I only count 5 running backs over the last 15 years that had a really good rookie season to the point where, they were worth drafting. Okay. So that's Alfred, in retrospect, that they were worth drafting and holding for the full season. Not, some guys had a stretch, but Alfred Morris, Jordan Howard, Bucky Irving, James Robinson, Phillip Lindsay, they were the real standouts at running back. That's 5 guys in the last 15 years drafted on day 3 or undrafted free agents that were fantasy standouts. They had Tyler Algier, Elijah Mitchell, Damian Pierce, Tyrone Tracy. They were close. Tracy, you could get that kind of player, right? So there's those guys. At wide receiver, it was basically 2 guys, right? It was Puka Nacua and Mike Williams, who had 9 touchdowns. Puka Nacua is the only 1,000-yard receiver in the last 15 years as a rookie drafted on day 3. The only day 3 rookie with 1,000-yard receiver in the last 15 years. So,
okay, and which Mike Williams was it?
Which Mike? It was. Where am I here? It was
Syracuse Mike Williams.
Tampa Bay. Yeah. Syracuse Mike Williams of Tampa Bay.
Right. So, of all the players that you mentioned, how many of them were great for fantasy for 4 or more years? And obviously, we can't count Puka, but I think we can assume that Puka will make that cut. But a lot of those guys that you name, man, by year 2, year 3, it was on the downhill.
All of them. We don't know about Bucky Irving, but all of them. Jordan Howard, I think, gave us a couple good years. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Run on fumes.
Yeah, good job, man. Your grades were great. Your write-ups were great. Really helped me get through the draft. All right, so with that being said, he says Bhayshul Tuten, who was the second pick. He could have easily been a day 2 pick. Second pick of round 4, and in a very good running back class. The next guy was Cam Skattebo. So he goes to the Giants. Bhayshul Tuten to the Jaguars, Cam Skattebo to the Giants. The first pick of round 4 was one of 2 receivers that the Titans picked in the round. Chimere DK. Later, they took Eric Iomanner. You get it?
I love how you do that every time.
Okay, again, it's commitment to the bit. All right, so Dave's favorite day 3 pick. Was Bhayshul Tuten. Chris, who's your favorite day 3 pick?
Well, Dave stole it from me because I came on this show, I think like a month ago, and was heaping a lot of praise on Tuten. I thought he could have been, like you said, a day 2 pick, and he almost was. He ran 4.32. We don't see that kind of speed at running back very frequently over a 40-inch vertical. I thought he was really elusive at Virginia Tech too. I liked that he started at North Carolina A&T, transfers into the ACC, and was still really productive. So kind of reminiscent of the little glimmer that we saw from Tank Bigsby, that he was an explosive back when healthy last season. But I think Tuten is more of a well-rounded running back. Give me a second here to look at the draft tracker that I and Josh Edwards were running so I can find another one, because Dave stole who I was going to talk about.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Actually, I have him right here. And I think when I just came on, you guys were talking about like that running back, you can tend to find better day 3 or even 6th and 7th round options that can become fantasy relevant. Jacory Croskey-Merritt, who went in the 7th round to the Washington Commanders out of Arizona. We didn't see him. Keep an eye on him. We didn't see him play much last season. There was like eligibility problems with him where I think like only after a few games, he just didn't play anymore at Arizona. He's big. He is very elusive. He has sharp cutting ability. The contact balance is there. And then he tested really well at the Arizona Pro Day. Had an over a 40-inch vertical. I believe he ran somewhere in the 4.4. So he's someone that I think could be in that Elijah Mitchell, Tyrone Tracy, day 3 selection that if the chips fall in terms of opportunity, Jacory Croskey-Merritt in Washington, they certainly have guys in front of him, but I think he could actually become a quality player that was picked late at the running back spot.
25 running backs picked. He was the very last one. But remember, some guys are undrafted free agents, do really well, not necessarily as rookies. I think the one that really jumps out for intrigue purposes is Jaydon Blue going to the Dallas Cowboys in round 5. And look, round 5 running backs is just day 3 running backs. It just usually doesn't happen. But man, can he beat out Javonte Williams? Probably not on 3rd down, but can he beat out Javonte Williams on 1st or 2nd down? Is this a team that signs J.K. Dobbins or Nick Chubb? Jamie keeps talking about that. But Jaydon Blue, Dave, huge opportunity here. Remember, this was a top 5 running back in Emory Hunt's rankings. He really likes Jaydon Blue. It's a guy who's had one game in his career with more than 15 carries, and that's something that Chris pointed out in his write-up, not a bell cow. But Dave, what do you think about this opportunity here for Jaydon Blue?
So here's how he fits like Tuten. He's very, very fast. I believe he's got pretty good hands. I think he can make plays in the passing game. And so that's probably going to be where he lives for the Cowboys, is someone who can catch maybe 3-4 balls a game and maybe get 3 or 4 carries per game. If he earns more, great. I'd love to see it. But I know that there's some flaws with him, the biggest of which being his build. He's not a very big guy. So it does look like Dallas is going to stick with a complementary backfield. And Blue should be a part of it just based on his speed alone.
All right. How about some veteran winners? When you look at this, I don't know that there's much we can say from day 3, but one guy, Dave, that did stick out to me was DeAndre Swift, because the Bears just did they draft any running backs?
In the 6th, they drafted the Rutgers running back in the 7th, I think, or 7th, Kyle Monangai.
Yes.
Or 7th round. I'm sorry, 233. So yes, I would, you can go ahead at him, but I think, that is a big winner in terms of just fantasy relevance for DeAndre Swift.
He was big time at Rutgers, wasn't he?
He was. He's one of those like chiseled backs that doesn't have a lot of explosiveness, but just like a contact balance guy that's really powerful and was, like you're saying, really productive over multiple seasons for the Rutgers.
And I've been talking about Chris doing all these write-ups. I definitely got to shout out Josh Edwards, who also did a lot of these grades write-ups on the website. So
yeah, he did a great job.
They're really outstanding. He did the write-up on this particular running back whose name I've already forgotten for Chicago. Kyle Monangai. That's right. So he stands out to me. I don't know if there's anyone else. Chase Brown. They didn't really, the Bengals did draft Tahj Brooks. And I've heard good things about Tahj Brooks. This was a guy that Matt Waldman said he was higher on the consensus, but a 6th round pick on Tahj Brooks, is that really enough to scare me off of Chase Brown? Because based on the production we got from Chase Brown last year after Zach Moss's injury, that was 1st round caliber play. He goes in the 3rd round in our drafts. Chris, what do you think Tahj Brooks brings to the Bengals backfield?
Well, I actually tweeted it right away that I've said the phrase running back renaissance like 50 times this pre-draft process, but how I would do it is how the Bengals have done it. I know that seems like kind of like, really, you wouldn't want to have Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm saying I think you can still get quality efficiency at running back in the 6th round. Chase Brown was a 6th round pick, and everyone was kind of waiting like, hey, he should probably be given more of the workload. Like you mentioned, Zach Moss goes down and he was awesome. Now, Tahj Brooks is not going to hit long runs like Chase Brown did. He's not that kind of back, but similar to my other pick, Jacory Croskey-Merritt, he's big. He's kind of like Devin Neal from Kansas, who went later, in that he is going to bounce off a lot of tacklers, and he's pretty elusive. He's not someone that is just looking for contact, only a downhill type players. I think he's actually a good complement to Chase Brown. So I still think Chase Brown will hit the majority of the big plays and certainly will start the season and probably play most of the season as the true number one back there. But I think Tahj Brooks can actually push him a little bit in time.
Back-to-back 1,500-yard rushing seasons, back-to-back seasons with at least 10 touchdowns, at least 7 rushing touchdowns in 4 straight seasons. He played 5 years of college football. What do you know how he is in pass protection, Chris?
He's pretty good in pass protection. I wouldn't say that he is a standout player where that's going to garner him playing time instantly, but at that size, I can't say off the top of my head if I remember that if there were some misses, but I do remember that there were times where he played to that kind of stockier frame and got up and under linebacker. So that could help him get on the field relatively early. But like you're mentioning, he has some like legitimate running skill to get more than what's blocked for him.
Tahj Brooks, by the way, so he gets drafted by the Bengals in the 6th round. They still have Zach Moss. So
true. Yeah, they do. Good point.
But Chase Brown was the number 3 running back per game in PPR after the Moss injury, weeks 9 through 17.
Mm-hmm.
I want to take a quick break here and see if we can come up with some veteran losers. I actually have a rookie loser, a question anyway, for a rookie running back after this on Fantasy Football Today.
Get ready.
Wait a second. I thought we were going tubing.
All 3 Sonic the Hedgehog movies and Knuckles are now streaming on Paramount Plus.
And everyone loves it.
Every adventure,
Just try to keep up.
every face-off,
This ends now.
and every moment that will have you saying,
Where have you been? My entire life!
It's showtime.
all 3 Sonic the Hedgehog movies and the entire Sonic universe are now streaming on Paramount Plus.
And welcome back. All right, so any losers that stand out? I'm going to ask you first about Quinshon Judkins because the Browns draft him in the 2nd round, and then they draft Dylan Sampson, who a lot of people liked, have pretty high in their running back prospect rankings, in the 4th round, and of course they have Jerome Ford. Dave, your thoughts on the Browns running backs?
Yeah, it definitely takes some of the shine off of Judkins having Sampson there. It is a potential thunder and lightning combination between those two. Sampson, more of a speedster. Judkins, who has speed, but we've talked about this a million times. He doesn't have that breakaway gear, more of a physical running back. I'm not sure if there's like a guy between the two of them that's outstanding in the passing game. So I'm curious to see how that shakes out. Maybe Sampson can get there. But it seems clear to me that Cleveland's got an idea that those two guys can work their backfield moving forward.
Yes. How the temptation on draft day is to always say that, right? Like, oh, this guy's going to be a piece of the puzzle. The reality, I think, on draft day is that a player picked in round 4, a running back picked in round 4, is unlikely to have a big role. However, is
being a 1B back a big role.
I wouldn't even. I don't. Okay, let me. You know what? Let me get my. Let's go over the round 4 running backs. Lately, last 10. Let's just work backwards. Jalen Wright, Bucky Irving,
Yes.
Will Shipley,
No.
Ray Davis, Isaac Arendo, Braylon Allen.
Okay, so I remember how Ray Davis and Braylon Allen were used last year. They had a role. They were part of their team's offenses to a degree. Dylan Sampson could have a role. I don't think he's going to be some dynamo for fantasy football purposes.
No, but nothing. But if he has the same role that Braylon Allen and Ray Davis had, it wouldn't knock Quinshon Judkins down for me.
That's fair.
Jerome
But it is
Ford,
somebody that's going to take Judkins off the field, and they still have Jerome Ford.
Yeah, Jerome Ford's a wild card. Roschon Johnson, I think, had a decent role in 2023 as a rookie. Damian Pierce.
Passing downs back in Chicago for years. I'm sorry to keep interrupting you.
No, it's okay. It's good
that
stuff. Damian Pierce, Zamir White, Isaiah Spiller, Pierre Strong, Hassan Haskins. These are running backs in 2022 in the 4th round. All right. Let's see. And I want to get Chris. I want to get your take on the Bears passing game. This is one of the debates we had yesterday.
Yeah.
Is Rome Odunze a loser? Is DJ Moore a loser because they draft Loveland in the 1st round? They draft Burden in the 2nd round. What do you think of that Bears passing game with those 4 weapons now?
I think Rome Odunze is a little bit of a loser in this situation now because I think he's mostly – I know teams are moving their wide receivers around and their stacked formations and things like that. But Rome Odunze is an outside wide receiver. Now, it will be interesting to see what Ben Johnson decides to do with him. But I think with DJ Moore to a certain degree, and certainly with Colston Loveland and Luther Burden, those are mismatched players where they're going to be motioning. They're going to be out wide. They're going to be in the slot. They're going to be used on tunnel screens, on jet sweeps. I think the lack of legitimate personal alignment versatility, I think could actually hurt Rome Odunze, which is crazy to say that because he was just, a top 15 pick 1 year ago.
By the way, just to finish up this discussion here, what do you think the chances are? We go back to the Browns real quick. What do you think, Chris, the chances are that Dylan Sampson is better than Quinshon Judkins?
I was a little lower on Judkins than most people, and I think that, like what Dave pointed out, that Judkins is the bigger back. He's the more classically, he looks like a feature back, can pound between the tackles. I didn't love Dylan Sampson either, but kind of what I said earlier with the different dynamic between Chase Brown and Tahj Brooks, if there's a well-blocked play in Cleveland, we know that still is one of the better offensive lines in the AFC, Dylan Sampson is more apt to hit the long run. I mean, Dave said it. So it wouldn't be shocking if we see some grind out 4 and 5 yard carries, 70, 80 yard games from Quinshon Judkins. And then as the season progresses, Dylan Sampson has 8 carries for 64 yards because he hits a 25 yard run. And then we start to see him eat into Quinshon Judkinson's carries as their, collective rookie seasons progress in 2025. That wouldn't shock me.
I think we can see the roles for Judkins that just makes sense at this point.
Yeah.
4-minute offense. Why would they put Ford or Dylan Sampson in there? They can use Judkins for that. Killing the clock at the end of the game, it's kind of the same thing. Yep. Goal line, short yardage. I think that their solution there is Judkins. So it's easy. This is easy. Judkins is going to be the first Browns running back we'll draft. It's just a matter of whether or not it's even worth drafting another one to go along with him or to target one later in your fantasy drafts. I just wouldn't have super sky-high expectations for Judkins, knowing that there's behind him who are capable and are probably going to have a role, just not a big role, working alongside him.
Can I give one suggestion this might be a hot take, and you guys are obviously the fantasy experts, I'm not. I think a veteran who was hurt a little bit on draft night is Kyren Williams of the Rams. And it's ironic because they draft Jarquez Hunter in round 4. My comparison for Jarquez Hunter was Kyren Williams. Stocky, very highly productive across multiple seasons, this time in the SEC, not at Notre Dame, obviously. The contact balance was through the roof, and I think he's pretty elusive. So for as much as Kyren Williams has been this tremendous touchdown producer and as a former 5th-round pick has been just so good in that Sean McVay system, we know that McVay comes from the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, and he's not necessarily going to just run Kyren Williams into the ground until he's 30 years old. And I think once we start to see Jarquez Hunter behind that offensive line in that time-tested scheme, Jarquez Hunter could start to eat into a little bit of what has been a stranglehold on the number 1 running back position for the Rams.
So before I get into that, can you just give me a little bit more on Hunter? Because he's one I'm not as familiar with.
To look at the analytics here, which I have, where's Jarquez Hunter? This past season at Auburn, his missed tackle force rate was 38.4%. That's close to Ashton Genty. So he was really, really elusive. And I like the fact that it's not a 1-year wonder. He played 4 seasons. He's not 25 years old. He didn't transfer 5 times. He was just at Auburn, big time yards per carry average in all 4 of his seasons at Auburn. And there's just a lot of runs where he's not seeking out contact, but he gets a well-blocked play, meets a linebacker, and he just kind of shrugs off him. Then there's a safety, and he just effortlessly runs through him, ends up being a 12-yard gain. So that's the type of runner that they get, kind of like Kyren Williams, that just repeatedly got more than what was blocked for him and had a lot of, I think, deceptive power because he was a little shorter. That's kind of the case with Jarquez Hunter, who's not going to hit home runs, just like Kyren Williams doesn't hit home runs, but is a very similar stylistic runner. And I think that's why the Rams gravitated toward him.
And you talked about running Kyren Williams into the ground until he's 30. They might run him into the ground until he's 26. Adam, he's in a contract year. We know that he's battled injuries throughout his career. My guess is that Hunter is an insurance policy in case things go south with Kyren Williams this year.
Remember, they have Blake Corum too. So
Yeah, but Corum really, not that he had many opportunities to show what he could do, but I think he underwhelmed. He was a guy that looked better in the spring than in the fall.
Agreed.
I don't really have a strong opinion on how he looked in the fall because, like as you said, he really just didn't have that many opportunities. But Kyren, I think people were a little concerned because they spent like Blake Corum went earlier in the NFL draft than Kyren Williams did a couple years earlier. Corum had a bad, disappointing, I guess, junior year or whatever it was. But he tore his meniscus the year before, so there was some optimism there. And Kyren just never gave an inch. I'm not concerned in 2025 about Kyren Williams, but I mean, they've 2 years in a row, they used a mid-round pick on a running back. So,
and he fended him off both times. You know, what I was talking about, how this could be the end of the line for Kyren Williams in LA, it could swing the other way. If he has another baller season, they'll give him an extension and he'll be there until he's 30, like Chris kind of mentioned. I still have him, by the way, as a late first-round pick in BPR.
All right. We have an exciting week coming up. We're going to have some mock drafts. We're going to have rookie-only mock drafts. We're going to have just regular half PPR and PPR mock drafts, I assume, and we're going to talk about them on the show. We'll have a guest on next week to give us some insight, some outsider perspective, non-CBS perspective on the class and on the rankings and all that. But Monday's show is going to be just a rankings update from hopefully Dave, Jamie, and Heath, all of them on the show. So we got an exciting week coming up. Also, Thomas, if you have the name, I can announce the winner of the draft contest, or we can do that on Monday. No big deal. But somebody got 9 out of 10. So
that's cool.
Pretty impressive. All right. Dave had a very funny idea for a segment. Just hilarious. We're not going to laugh out loud, but it was a good segment, Dave. Noah's Ark are teams that drafted 2 players at the same position. I like this. So 2 of each running back. Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson of the Browns. And I don't know if we need to really talk about the others, but Jaydon Blue in round 5 and Phil Maffa in round 7 to the Cowboys. And the Jaguars took Bhayshul Tuten in round 4 and LaQuint Allen in round 7. So that's 7th round investments there. Usually not too big of a deal, but the Cowboys and the Jaguars doubling up on running backs. Chris, your thoughts?
I didn't really like any of those at all. I mean, Judkins and Sampson, I could get behind. Phil Maffa to me, was not like he was a priority free agent to me. He is not explosive whatsoever. He is a boulder of a running back. He's going to run over some guys. But in terms of like even breaking away from the second level, I didn't really see it. Love Tuten. LaQuint Allen, I don't know if we talked about him when I was on like a month ago, but he ran like legitimate receiver routes at Syracuse. Like there are times where he's in the slot, running a slant, running a whip route. So he's a good receiver. Maybe that's like the only bit of appeal with him if we're thinking PPR, or his ability to earn some targets or earn some action on the field. But in terms of his explosiveness, it's not really there. And I think he's more of like an offensive weapon than a pure running back.
All right, 2 wide receivers. Don't think we have to talk about the Bucks, but we'll just mention them. Emeka Egbuka in round 1, Tez Johnson in round 7. The Chargers with Trey Harris in round 2 and Keandre Lambert-Smith in round 5. The Panthers, Tet McMillan round 1, Jimmy Horn round 6. The Packers, the Packers probably made the most significant investment with a round 1 and 3 pick. Matthew Golden round 1, Savion Williams round 3. The Raiders and the Texans would give them a run for their money, though. The Raiders took Jack Besh in round 2 and Dante Thornton in round 4. 6'5" wide receiver who ran a 4.30. Dante Thornton. I know someone that you like, Chris, for the Raiders.
Yes.
The Texans took Jaden Higgins in round 2 and Jalen Knoll in round 3. And the Titans took 2 wide receivers in round 4. Chimere DK out of Florida and Alec Iomanner. Stanford.
The Titans have added another wide receiver.
Oh, yeah?
Who is
they
it,
have
Dave?
Signed Xavier Restrepo from the University of Miami to join his quarterback Cam Ward in
That's smart.
Nashville.
That's
very
nice.
smart.
What a connection they had.
It was amazing. And this is somebody I've known since he was in high school. He went to the school that my kids went to and watched him play ball down here in Florida. Outstanding player. Outstanding guy.
That's
very
cool.
happy for him.
So, Dave, when you look at these teams doubling up on wide receivers, what stands out to you?
Well, I mean, a lot of these teams are taking wide receivers on day 3. And so because of that, it just does it's got to water down the excitement. Again, this wasn't a great class to begin with, and we know that day 3 players don't stick long term. But I think any team that, like the Titans, clearly not only drafted 2 wide receivers, they just added Restrepo. I'm sure they'll add more players. Like, they need to restock their receiver room. I think the Chargers felt like something similar. I know they added Mike Williams and they've got Quentin Johnston, but after losing Josh Palmer, I think they needed to add some players. The Raiders, after Jacoby Myers, they needed to do something as well. The one that's curious to me is Tampa, and not Tahj Johnson, because I think he's going to be a special teams guy and that's it. But just making that investment in Ibuka, I think we've got it where he's the eventual replacement just on the field, not necessarily in a specific role for Mike Evans. And they're trying to just play a couple of years ahead, that when Evans is gone, Ibuka can come in and he can be a big contributor. Carolina is another team. They've missed on so many wide receivers over the past few years. I mean, they drafted Liggett last year with a late first-round pick, and Thielen was their best wide receiver again. So getting McMillan and then adding Jimmy Horn, I'm not the biggest Jimmy Horn guy. That's a team that needed to do something. These are all teams that just needed to do something at wide receiver, bulk up their rooms a little bit. There isn't. I don't feel great about any of the day 3 wide receivers.
You talk about Jimmy Horn, it just makes me crazy just thinking about Joe Horn and the cell phone celebration against the Giants. I'm still mad about that. I was so insulted when he did that. 2 tight ends, Elijah Arroyo. Well, looking back, yeah. Elijah Arroyo to the Seahawks in the 2nd round, and then they took Robbie Oots.
Is Oots more of a fullback, Chris?
Yeah, he is. I mean, they used him as kind of like an H-back, where he would kind of be like split in the backfield, but out by a tight end. Yeah, he's not going to catch a lot of passes. I don't think.
So they drafted 2 tight ends, neither of which are a traditional tight end.
Correct. So he's not going to affect Elijah Arroyo. Also, I just dropped a sick beat and nobody said anything. That was annoying. 2 quarterbacks.
It'll be the last time you can use that joke too.
Cleveland took Dylan Gabriel in round 3, and then finally Shedeur Sanders in round 5. Did you have Sanders ranked higher than Gabriel? Both of you guys.
Yes, 1,000,000%. And that's no disrespect to Dylan Gabriel, but it was very easy in terms of the traits. Even though Shedeur Sanders' traits are not that good, Dylan Gabriel, I think my arm is around the same arm strength of Dylan Gabriel. You know, the anticipation, he's a lot better than me. The accuracy, a lot better than I would be on the football field. But you have to meet a certain threshold to play quarterback in the NFL in terms of your ability to drive the football. And Dylan Gabriel, I just didn't think had that. We talk so much about Shedeur Sanders can't really elude pressure. He's kind of heavy-footed. Dylan Gabriel is not going to run away from too many 6'4", 260-pound edge rushers in the NFL. So the fact that he was picked 2 rounds earlier, I mean, we could do a whole show on this. We don't need to do that. But yes, I certainly had Shedeur Sanders ranked higher, and I was very surprised that Gabriel was picked that far in front of Shedeur Sanders.
Who's going to be their quarterback? I mean, they've got 4 guys now. They've got Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and these 2 rookies.
It's a very strange quarterback room, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think they might have drafted themselves a headache.
Well, what does this mean for Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku for you, Dave?
I am anticipating Flacco winning the job. Mm-hmm. Until we hear otherwise about, wow, Shedeur Sanders is looking outstanding at camp, or, hey, Kenny Pickett is really giving Flacco a run for his money, or Joe Flacco is walking back to the trainer's room for the 3rd time this week with ice on his shoulder, and there's questions about his durability. Like, short of that, Flacco's got the ability. The coaching staff has to love him after what he did for them a couple of seasons ago. I can't imagine Cleveland doing anything but going into the season with Flacco at quarterback, and that's going to be great for Jerry Jeudy. That's another guy, another veteran who won, because 4 days ago, we thought, Travis Hunter's going to go to Cleveland. He's going to take work away from Njoku and Jerry Jeudy. Nope, Jacksonville moves up to get him. It keeps Jerry Jeudy very much alive in fantasy. And Njoku's numbers, I can look it up for you if you want me to, but with Joe Flacco, they were ridiculously good 2 years ago. And Njoku's numbers last year without Deshaun Watson were ridiculously good without Joe Flacco. And so now he's going to have the opportunity to still be that short area target. Judy can work further downfield. Flacco is only going to target those two guys. I don't think that he's going to go crazy looking for other wide receivers in Cleveland. And as long as Cleveland's competitive, Flacco will be under center. Now, when Cleveland isn't competitive, that could be when we see Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel or Kenny Pickett, taking over just to see what they can do. And Cleveland starts to evaluate what these guys are to their team moving forward. I'm hoping that Shedeur Sanders rises to the occasion. I think his talent was good. I'm not going to say that it was amazing. I thought that he was the third best quarterback in the draft. I think that he has potential to play in the NFL, and I'd like to see him get the opportunity to do it. And I think Cleveland was actually, it's kind of silly to say this because they passed on him 6 times before they took him, but I think they were smart to take him. And so they'll figure out what they're doing in their quarterback room, and it probably means they're trading one of these guys. And I doubt it's going to be Flacco unless both rookies are good, or Pickett and one of the rookies are good. And I doubt it's going to be one of the rookies because they just drafted them. So I hope Kenny Pickett is renting in Cleveland and not owning.
Kenny Pickett to the Steelers makes too much sense. Just kidding.
I would say Kenny Pickett to the Saints makes too much sense because he's already worked and started for Kellen Moore. He did that last year in Philadelphia. I believe he's got relationships with other coaches on the Saints offense. To me, that would make a ton of sense, is for New Orleans to flip Cleveland a pick. And
for context here, George Kittle averaged 15.8 PPR fantasy points per game last year, which was number 1, 15.8. 2 years ago, David Njoku scored 16.4 or more PPR fantasy points in each of his last 5 games with Joe Flacco.
Wow.
So pretty incredible.
Hey, can I throw out a quick nugget coaching wise too, just because Dave did, which I think is interesting. I'm with Dave. I think Joe Flacco is gonna start. I do hope Shedeur Sanders rises to the occasion. What was interesting to me, and you pointed it out, Dave, that the Browns passed on Shedeur six times before they picked him. Their head coach, Kevin Stefanski, and Shedeur Sanders' offensive coordinator, Pat Shurmur, worked together in Minnesota. So I'm not going to say that the offense is like the exact same. I can't say that I know the playbook. It's not, but you would think that, maybe Pat Shurmur, send a couple of texts to Kevin Stefanski saying like, hey, maybe this is not someone that you want to pick, but at least there is a coaching connection that those two know each other. And yes, Pat Shurmur wanted to throw the ball more. They barely ran it, but I think Shedeur is kind of built for the play action bootleg, can throw a little bit on the run type of offense that is very structured and actually doesn't want their quarterback to be improvising and creating off structure a lot, which is kind of tells the story of the formulation and the current state of their quarterback room in Cleveland.
By the way, the Raiders also drafted 2 quarterbacks in round 6, but Tommy Millott will probably change positions.
Yes.
Okay. So who do you guys draft first in a dynasty league? Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel?
Sanders.
Yeah. Oh yeah, me too.
I would love to know the truth about the war room reaction when Cleveland took Sanders.
They say that it was not timed up right?
That's they did say that. Yeah, okay, but it looked like someone just stole their dog.
It looked really somber.
Sanders. Yeah, it was weird.
Didn't they have a bunch of fans in the draft room? Like there were a bunch of people wearing Browns Give Back shirts, something to that effect.
Okay.
It did not look like the back of the room had a lot of scouts there.
No.
And so I wonder if they were annoyed because their draft room had been infiltrated by some deserving fans.
To me, what was interesting about that video is earlier, and maybe this was just, first and second round compared to the 5th round. Early on when they went to the Browns war room, I was mostly watching NFL Network. Jimmy Haslam was sitting like right behind Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry. When that happened, I didn't see Jimmy Haslam. So it kind of like reeked. I guess you could interpret it either way, but kind of like Jimmy Haslam walks in and says, pick Shedeur Sanders. Now I'm getting out of the shot. So I don't want anyone to be like zeroing in on my facial expressions during this. That's like instantly what I thought of too, beyond like the, again, somber demeanor that almost everyone had up front.
I tell you, man, If it was Jimmy Haslam who said pick Shedeur Sanders, he did the right thing. You got to pick Shedeur Sanders in the 5th round.
The value was too good. Yeah.
Come on now. Okay, we'll take a break here. We'll look at anything that we missed, any players. We're not going to talk about every single player drafted today, but anything else that we need to discuss. And we will be, I definitely want to talk about Trevor Etienne. So we'll talk about him in and the Giants. I can't believe I didn't mention this. Tyrone Tracy is maybe the biggest loser of them all. And we will talk about that when we come back. All right, some quarterback news. Just Minnesota acquired Sam Howell from the Seahawks, so that gives them a backup quarterback. You had the Eagles taking Kyle McCord, the Steelers taking Will Howard. I'm not going to read everything. Chris, just real quick, is there anything you want to say about the quarterbacks drafted today?
Not really. I was pretty down on the later round quarterbacks in this class. So there wasn't anyone that was like, oh man, I mean, outside of Shedeur Sanders, really, who we just talked about. I mean, maybe Will Howard because of the fact that the Steelers have Mason Rudolph. And I think Will Howard is actually a lot like Mason Rudolph in terms of what he can do on the field from in the pocket, things like that. Maybe even a little bit better of an athlete than Rudolph. But beyond that, I personally didn't think there was any, wow, like that's a fun, sneaky option late at the quarterback spot.
I think McCord is interesting. I think it's cool that he's going back to Philadelphia. And obviously he's not the same type of quarterback as Jalen Hurts. But if he shows out in camp and he's the backup to start the year and Hurts has to miss some time, they've got a solid thrower and he'll have good protection. And he might be able to make some plays and help those wide receivers out. It would be a different type of offense.
Okay, let's go to the running backs here. So right out of the gate, basically, we get Bhayshul Tuten to Jacksonville. We've talked about that. But then we get Cam Skattebo out of Arizona State going to the Giants. He's a kind of a beast out there, but he's pretty slow by NFL running back standards. Fair to say I'm pretty conflicted on him. But Dave, who are you drafting, Skattebo or Tyrone Tracy first?
I have to take one of these guys.
That's how I feel. I said I think it's terrible for fantasy.
Yeah, it is. Right.
This is a day 3 running back that I do think has a good chance to get a role. They still have Devin Singletary, right?
Yes. And so there's a role, but it's not guaranteed to be a large role. And the lack of speed is going to be an issue, but I don't think you're playing Skattebo for his speed. You're playing him for his muscle and his agility. And I don't hate it. He could have what kind of a role did I talk about for Judkins? Skattebo can do some of those things for the Giants, but so can Singletary and so can Tracy.
According to Matt Waldman, very bad in pass protection, bad technique.
Yeah, you won't see him. He's going to play on running downs, but not every running down.
He's a good compliment for Tracy, right? It kind of makes sense, but
but they're going to use 3.
I don't know who. I don't know if they're going to use 3.
They will if they don't use 3, then Skattebo isn't very good.
There's no need to use 3. You think they're going to use? No, I think Skattebo will play over Singletary. That's what I think.
I don't. Or if he does, it's because he had a great camp and Singletary didn't. But they'll use Skattebo on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, 1st and goal from the 1. Like that makes sense, and that's going to suck for Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary. Not that anybody's starting those guys at this point. This is easy. This is a backfield to avoid. Maybe you take Tracy with a late pick and full PPR and hope for the best.
I agree with you that it's a backfield to avoid. I don't know that I agree with this idea that Devin Singletary would play ahead of Skattebo, but Skattebo would come in at 3rd and 1 and goal line situation. The
coaches are going to trust Singletary. They love Devin Singletary. And Singletary did a solid job last year when given an opportunity.
But as soon as he got hurt, we saw that Tyrone Tracy was a lot better than him. And when he came back, he really had a pretty limited role. He played second fiddle to Tracy.
Okay. But I still think Singletary will play out of Skattebo in general.
I think it starts.
Tracy will play. Tracy's the one. If gun to my head, you're making me pick a Giants running back, it's Tyrone Tracy. Can I do it in round 8?
Gunner to your helm. It's kind of like gun to my head, right? But okay, I think my final thought is Singletary starts the season ahead of Skattebo. Skattebo has a chance to overtake him if he's good enough. Okay, all right. You want to weigh in on that, Chris, or
just one other one that I want to throw out there, and it's not even a player that I particularly liked on film, and the analytics were not too kind to him, but that could impact Joe Mixon. Woody Marks, the Houston Texans 4th round pick out of USC. Not crazy elusive, and it doesn't need to be a full scouting report, but I think it could impact Joe Mixon only because the Texans made a massive trade up to get Woody Marks. And in the draft pick trade chart, when I was doing the real grades, I'm typing in those trade details, and it was a huge overpayment. This was like there was a bunch of running backs still available after round 4. Obviously, we've talked about 10 of them already, and the Houston Texans felt compelled to move up to pick Woody Marks. So I don't know if he's nowhere near as talented as Joe Mixon. I don't think he's as talented as Dameon Pierce, but I thought that was interesting to see in terms of just looking at someone that has been a pretty reliable fantasy player in Joe Mixon, getting his team watching his team pick a running back that they traded massively up from the 5th round into the 4th to get in Woody Marks.
Dave, Trevor Etienne has a little bit of work to do. He's got Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle ahead of him, but he's the 3rd running back of day 3 after Tuten and Skattebo. And then you've got, just trying to get guys we haven't talked about, Devin Neal. Devin Neal was someone that, in the consensus fantasy rankings before the draft, I think he was top 7 or so. He was top 10 for sure. The 6th round pick.
I don't know about top 5 or 6 or whatever.
No, I remember I was listening to Jacob Gibbs and Heath on the Dynasty show. They were talking about running back 6 through 10 in the consensus rankings, and Devin Neal was one of the guys they talked about. I said was it with you, Chris? Whoever we were talking about with running backs, I was like, he's my least favorite player that I've looked at. I looked at like 13 running backs. I have absolutely no interest in Devin Neal, and he went in the 6th round. But a lot of people really liked him. So he was someone that went a lot later. Damien Martinez also went a lot later to Seattle.
I like Damien Martinez a lot more. Obviously, super crowded backfield, but in terms of long-term production, if you're stashing him, I mean, you guys can speak about the dynasty value of some of these players better than I can. But 21 years old compared to Devin Neal, who's a little older, I think Damien Martinez is more elusive and he's better through contact. Also, Devin Neal did not have a very good workout. His relative athletic score was below 7. I think it was like somewhere in the 5s or 6s, which is not very good. So I agree with you, Adam, that Neal was like fun on film, was a great productive runner at Kansas. But in terms of transitioning that to the NFL, now that we know even that he's a 6th rounder, I think the chances are extremely low that he becomes a quality back in the NFL.
Yeah, it must have been Emery we were talking to when we talked about Devin Neal. What do you think about Etienne as a 4th round pick right after Tuten and Skattebo? My personal thought was that he looked better at Florida than he did at Georgia. And
I agree with that.
Yeah, I don't know if he put on weight or something like that, but he looked pretty damn fast at Florida and not so much. Oh, Schaefer wants in. Yeah, and I want to hear from you because, he doesn't want in. Okay. Well, he's a Florida guy, but what do you think about Etienne? You think he has a chance to move up on the depth chart there? Currently 3rd, I would say, for Carolina.
Yeah, I do think so. I mean, he's someone that I think was kind of picked maybe a little early, but I had him like 4th to 5th range. He's also very young. And for as much as Chuba Hubbard emerged last season and was super productive at Oklahoma State, this is not someone that is a premier talent, that is this marquee prospect at the running back position in terms of his athleticism and what he can do. So I think in time, Trevor Etienne, if maybe he does shed a little weight and plays to the more of the level of explosiveness that he showed at Florida in a couple years or late this season, if there's an injury, I think Trevor Etienne is skilled enough with the side-to-side wiggle and some of that explosiveness to ultimately, be that waiver wire guy that could be, if you're in a pinch, that could make sense for your roster.
All right, to wrap up running backs, we talked about most of the guys in round 4. Jarquez Hunter is someone that Chris likes. Dylan Sampson going to Cleveland to pair with Quinshon Judkins and now Jerome Ford as well. Jordan James going to the 49ers. They always draft a running back. Jaydon Blue, I talked about at the top of the show, going to the Cowboys in round 5. DJ Giddens to the Colts. You're not going to get a lot of run with the Colts, but it's another guy that's, people like DJ Giddens. Maybe if something happens to, maybe this is a good handcuff. Ollie Gordon to the Dolphins. I think you could say that that Jalen Wright is a winner. He probably goes into the season as the number 2 running back for the Dolphins. Jalen Wright. Devin Neal to the Saints. Khalil Mullins to the Titans. Tahj Brooks to the Bengals. Damien Martinez, Seahawks. Brashard Smith to the Chiefs, Dave. What do you think about that?
I think he's a good third down, passing down type of running back. Good hands, good speed, smaller guy, and a potential contributor maybe this year. You know what the track record is of rookie running backs with Andy Reid. Sometimes they hit, but I don't know about day 3 guys being able to do it, especially guys taking this late.
The interesting fact with Brashard Smith that is a segue from what Dave said, former wide receiver converted to running back. So it's not just like, oh, hey, he's, good in the screen game. He can run legitimate routes and track the football down the field.
And unlike Antonio Gibson and Tyrone Tracy, he had a lot more carries in college, even though it was only 1 year. He had a full year of true running back work at SMU. Kyle Monangai to the Bears, LaQuint Allen to the Jaguars. These are all 7th-round picks. Phil Moffitt to the Cowboys, and Jacory Croskey-Merritt to the Commanders. Wide receivers. Do you see, Chris, any wide receivers taken on day 3 that you think will be, fantasy relevant, even if for a month in 2025?
Not many. I mean, Dave kind of spoke to it earlier that good wide receiver class, not really a great wide receiver class. The one who, and it's going to sound crazy and you guys can totally throw water on this idea, but I like, and maybe I'm getting too obsessed with where guys are going to line up. Torrey Horton to the Seahawks. I like him because he played predominantly on the outside of Colorado State. 6'2", runs really good routes, was really productive at Colorado State for 3 seasons. And then he tested really well. They have Cooper Kupp. They have Smith and Jigba. I like the fact that Torrey Horton is a little different than some of the other options that are certainly going to be well ahead of him in the pecking order. But I think he brings something different to the field, being able to win on the outside against bigger, longer cornerbacks.
They also drafted Ricky White. So
late. Yeah.
I almost feel like these are shots from Seattle to try and find somebody who can take the top off the defense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It ain't going to be Kupp or JSN doing that.
At tight end, Gunnar Helm was taken in the 4th round. He was the only 4th-round tight end. He's 6'5", 241 out of Texas, and he ran a 4.84 40. He's going to Tennessee. 4.84 40 is not so great. How far behind the top 6 tight ends in this class who were drafted in rounds 1 through 3 do you think Gunnar Helm is?
I was not a huge fan, but what I will say, the caveat about the 4.84 is that right afterward, he must have, or his agent must have reached out to Ian Rappaport. He tweeted, "Oh, look, I rolled my ankle." He was one of those players that got a bad start and a false start in his 40, and you saw him fall down, and then he claimed that that's why he didn't test really well because his testing was really, really poor. What I do like about Gunnar Helm, he's going to catch everything, and he's pretty rugged after the catch. He is not someone who is going to create a lot of separation. Then again, day 3 tight ends, you're not going to get a lot of those players who can do that in any draft. So I think underneath, if Cam Ward is check down happy, or they're telling him, Brian Callahan is saying, check the football down, check it down. We're going to get it, out into the flats to your tight end. Gunnar Helm can maybe create a little bit more than you would expect. He's not just going to catch the ball and run out of bounds. There's a little bit of balance when he's absorbing contact. We saw him do that a fair amount of the time at Texas and I don't want to say he's Rob Gronkowski, obviously, but make some difficult catches in traffic. So that's more of the refinement and the nuance part of his game that I like a lot more than his burst or his speed down the seam.
If your dynasty rookie only draft is 3 rounds, you're not even drafting him there. And you're not going to draft him in redraft. Tight end premium, you might take Gunnar Helm, but I don't see him being a big contributor.
Same question about tight ends, Chris. Do you see anyone making any impact this year? Taken on day 4, on day 3?
Day 4. It feels like it's day 4, doesn't it? I like Mitchell Evans he's similar to Gunnar Helm. He's like a better version of Gunnar Helm in that not going to be a big separator, but is even better, I think, in traffic. And he's even better and had a higher missed tackle force rate than Gunnar Helm after the catch. So There is Jatavian Sanders there in Carolina, but again, this is not like someone that is impossible to leap on the depth chart. And all it takes, I think, is a game or two for a relatively younger quarterback where you're making some big plays, where him and the coaching staff is like, hey, let's get this guy out there. He's a reliable player for us. He was really an overachiever at Notre Dame. So as a 5th rounder, like you're saying, there's not, day 4 of the draft, so to speak, not a lot of upside, I think, in general. But Mitchell Evans in Carolina is one that kind of caught my eye as someone that might have a little bit of a path to make an impact early in his career.
And one that caught my eye was Caleb Lohner in round 7 to Detroit. He's a former basketball player. I mean, you don't have to draft or anything.
He's
but
barely played football, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so a little bit of a project, but seems to have some pretty good athletic skills.
Would you say he's a loner, a rebel?
He's no Robbie. Right, anyway, I just want to read a quick email here. This is from Jake in Kansas City, and it was about my nap story. And he said, Adam, great story. This is a perfect time of year to have no AC or heat and windows open and being fully relaxed on a beautiful day. Thanks for sharing. It's not just you.
Dude's never lived in Miami.
And also, I don't have a Ron Dane jersey, Schaefer. Schaefer's talking smack about me. Someone compared Cam Skattebo to Ron Dane, I think. And then a lot of people were like, who the hell was Ron Dane? Ron Dane was at the time, like the most prolific running back in college football history. I think he set the record.
He did.
And then the Giants drafted him in 2000. He was a big boy. You don't see running backs like him anymore. And Schaefer, of course, reminding everyone they drafted him over Sean Alexander. I did not have a Ron Dane jersey. I had a Rodney Hampton jersey, which is even more old school, big running back. Not quite as big as Ron
What
Dane.
about Tyrone Wheatley?
I didn't have a Tyrone Wheatley jersey. Is he 28? I think he may have been 28. Hampton was 27.
28. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. They had some big running backs, those Giants, back then. Now they got another one. Brandon Jacobs, continuing the tradition. Cam Skattebo. Yeah. He's not like he runs like that, but he's not built like that. That's the problem.
No, he's more David Montgomery. He's not quite as good of an athlete as Montgomery, but built low to the ground and powerful that way, as opposed to like those guys were like 6'1", 245, just like trains on the football field.
They don't exist anymore.
No,
all right.
They do not.
Thanks everyone for maybe estimate. Thanks everyone for watching and listening. We will talk to you on Monday with a rankings update. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everybody.